Your most productive habit might be the thing keeping you stuck. That stack of self-help books on your nightstand, the productivity podcasts during your commute, the morning routine you redesigned for the 4th time this year. All of it feels like forward motion. By the end of this, you'll understand the exact mechanism your brain uses to disguise consumption as progress, and why the fix is simpler and more uncomfortable than any book will tell you. A $50 billion industry runs on one assumption, that the right information will change your life. Over 15,000 self-help books get published in the United States every single year. Apps, courses, retreats, coaching programs. The market grows at 8% annually, and yet there's no consistent empirical evidence that any of it produces lasting behavioral transformation at scale. The industry keeps growing, the customers keep buying. The gap between who you are and who you want to be stays open. That gap is the product. Here's what's happening inside your skull while you highlight passages. Neuroscientist Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan identified 2 separate brain systems, one for wanting, one for liking. Dopamine, the chemical you've heard called the reward molecule, drives the wanting system. It fires during anticipation before you get anything. The planning, the researching, the imagining, that's where the hit comes from. Your brain gets a motivational spike from reading about discipline that feels almost identical to the spike from actually being disciplined. The wanting system is neurobiologically larger and more persistent than the liking system. So you keep seeking, you keep consuming, and every new book feels like a fresh start because, chemically, it is one. But the dopamine trick is only half the trap. The other half is what happens when you visualize success. Gabrielle Uttingen, a psychologist at NYU, ran a study on women in a weight loss program. The women with the strongest positive fantasies about their future bodies lost an average of 24 pounds less than women with more realistic mental imagery. 24 pounds. The gap between dreamers and realists was measured in flesh. Uttingen's broader research, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, confirmed the pattern across multiple domains. The most positive fantasies about the future predicted the poorest achievement. Her explanation cuts deep. The pleasure we gain from positive fantasies allows us to fulfill our wishes virtually, sapping our energy to perform the hard work of meeting challenges and achieving goals in real life. Your brain has a simulator. Neuroscience calls it the default mode network. It activates when you remember the past and when you imagine the future, building scenarios so realistic that your reward circuitry partially counts them as real. So when you spend an evening planning your gym routine, choosing the program, ordering the shoes, telling your friend about your new commitment, you've already collected a significant portion of the psychological payoff. The urgency to actually go drops. You extracted the feeling without the friction. Now layer social media on top of this. Unlike binge watching a show or scrolling memes, consuming self-improvement content is socially praised. You can post your reading list, share podcast highlights, talk about your morning routine at dinner. Every signal says, "I'm growing," and your social circle rewards it with approval. That approval creates a second dopamine loop stacked on top of the neurological one. Internally, your brain rewards the seeking. Externally, your friends reward the signaling. The consumption becomes doubly reinforced while producing zero change. Psychologists have a term for this dynamic: self-handicapping. "I'm working on it" becomes armor. It sounds like progress. It functions as protection. You can't fail at something you're perpetually preparing for. The identity of someone who is working on themselves replaces the actual work. Researchers call this identity foreclosure. You commit to the label of growth seeker without going through genuine transformation. The label substitutes for the thing it describes. Think about the last self-help book you finished. Can you name 3 specific actions you took because of it? Actions that lasted longer than a week? A 2008 analysis of the 50 top-selling self-help books found that only 24% guided readers on how to measure their own progress. A third addressed long-term solutions. The rest delivered short-term emotional boosts. That's the architecture. Just enough inspiration to feel different, never enough structure to become different. Research on learning confirms why. Passive consumption, reading, listening, watching, produces roughly 10% retention within 24 hours. Active retrieval practice, where you test yourself and apply skills under pressure, improves retention by 200 to 400%. Corporate training built on passive models produces 13% skill transfer to the job. Active application approaches push that past 75%. The entire self-help industry is built on the delivery method that science consistently ranks as least effective for lasting change. Procrastination researcher Piers Steele published a landmark meta-analysis in Psychological Bulletin, covering nearly 700 correlations. His core finding: the brain prefers immediate, certain rewards over delayed, uncertain ones. Self-help consumption wins that contest every time. It delivers an instant emotional reward: inspiration, identity reinforcement, the warmth of feeling like you're on the right track, while actual change demands sustained discomfort with no guaranteed payoff. Steele called procrastination quintessential self-regulatory failure. Self-help consumption passes every internal checkpoint because it wears the language of the prefrontal cortex while delivering a limbic hit. It's procrastination in a blazer. So what actually works? Oettingen developed a method called WOOP, Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. It outperforms pure positive visualization because it forces cognitive dissonance between where you are and where you want to be. That dissonance is uncomfortable. Your brain wants to resolve it, and resolution requires movement, not more reading. The pattern across every domain of behavior change research points the same direction: active practice, deliberate discomfort, real-world feedback. A therapeutic relationship works where books fail because it creates accountability and challenges unconscious patterns in real time. You can't highlight your way through a conversation with someone who asks why you flinched. One concrete, uncomfortable action. A difficult conversation you've postponed. A boundary you've been afraid to set. A skill you've been reading about instead of practicing. Changes more neural architecture than a shelf of books about neural architecture. The person who has read 12 self-help books and feels inspired daily has optimized for feeling. The person who has read 0 and taken one uncomfortable step has optimized for becoming. Your brain will resist this. Right now, it's already framing this as another piece of content to absorb, another insight to file away. Notice that impulse. That's the loop completing itself in real time. The only way to break it is to close this, pick the one thing you've been preparing for instead of doing, and do it badly, today, before the inspiration fades and the planning starts again.